Welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast with Mike Brennan. Hey everybody, Mike Brennan here, host of Creative Chats Podcast. On today's episode, I get to sit down with my friend Ryan Koral, and we talk about story, we talk about video, because he does both of those things extremely well. And even more so, we dive into his story personally of how he came to do what he does today and what that looks like and some of the hardships along the way. We get real tactical and practical in some places, and we also get some personal story coming out where he shares about just some struggles of when you take something that you're passionate about, some creative ability, and then you tie it to livelihood. Sometimes things get tricky and we can fall out of love with the thing that we once were so passionate about. And so how do we navigate those waters of making a livelihood from our creative abilities and yet still maintaining a sense of passion and drive and curiosity? So this is an amazing episode. I love it because we're just two guys hanging out talking about creativity, and Ryan offers some pretty awesome practical things at the end of this episode where you can go to his website and he offers some resources to help you tell your story better. So without further ado, here is my creative chat with Ryan Koral. Well, welcome to the Creative Chats Podcast, Ryan. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Man, this is my AI of myself.
I love it. Well, I got to tell you, this is the first official, well, maybe not official yet, but this is the first time I'm doing a video podcast, and it is your fault.
You're welcome.
No, I'm excited about this because, we were in Orlando, Florida, and you talked a lot about the use of video, and you even called out on the carpet and you said, if you're doing a podcast and you're not using video, you're missing out. Like, this is, what are you doing? And I felt this sting of rebuke and went, oh man, like, and I was like,
good.
I've been I've been resisting a little bit because of some practicalities. But it was finally like, okay, I think this next year, this is when I'm stepping into growing this in that way. And so I say all that as a little intro because it's a thank you. It really is, even though it was backhanded a little bit. It is a thank you, and you're helping me grow, and I appreciate the conversation that you bring around video and storytelling, which we're going to get into today, and how you do it is very accessible, and so just thank you for that. Really, seriously.
Yeah, I'm glad. I kind of forgot that, and even before we hit record, you're talking about video editing, and I was like, oh yeah, this is just how I do it. I forgot that. Yeah, this is like the start of the video thing for you. So kudos to you for taking action. That's huge. So many people are afraid to turn the camera on. Right. So you're overcoming that fear, which I love. And, one of the things that we talked about in Orlando is that the fastest way to build trust and to connect with people is to be in person. Right. We're not in person, but, we're doing the next best thing here, which we're having a virtual video call. And then for people to actually see you. I mean, you've got a great voice for podcast and a pretty good face for video. I'm just kidding. But, to be able to show up for your people and so they can see you, for the ones that want to watch, like, this is a great opportunity. And, when you can see somebody, it does something different to your insides. That sounds weird, but it can build trust. And then not only are you able to share with people that really want to watch, but now you've got, like, especially from this episode, you're going to have so many amazing sound bites, like gold nuggets. I'm teasing, but
no, it's true.
The opportunity for content outside of just the full version of the episode it's not endless, but there's just so much more opportunity to be able to use and to bring value to your audience, not just with audio, but for them to see your guests, for them to see you, that trust is just going to increase. So good job doing the video thing.
Well, thank you. Yes. And it's funny because, I was a pretty shy kid. I overcame that obviously over the years, but, and it's not a thing where I'm like, well, I don't want to be on camera. I don't know. It's honestly, it was really more a practical, I've got a process that's pretty dialed in, and I don't know that I want to mess with that.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to wrestle with what is the benefit that I'm missing out on versus staying in my process, but I'm going to have the same results because I'm doing the same things.
Yeah.
And so, and I hope that's a prod to the listeners right now as well, to be like, don't be so stubborn in your own process or in things that you do, how you do them. This is the way we've always done them kind of mentality, that you miss out on opportunity and possibility, I think, really,
Yeah. The thing that I love, you're using Riverside. That's what we're recording in today. And, if this was Zoom, there are a lot more steps. But I was telling you when we were in Orlando, I'm like, dude, if you use Riverside, you're going to hit stop after we're done with this interview and then give Riverside a few minutes for it to transcode like all of our video footage. And you literally, like, all of the text, the transcription from this episode is going to be on the screen. So you can cut out like the first, a couple minutes where I'm awkward and whatever. And then you can cut out the end when you're like, hey, thanks again for coming, Ryan. We'll see you next year in Orlando or whatever. Hit delete on those parts. And then unless, I screw up really bad in the middle, and if I do, you can search through that, delete that out. And then you've got like a full edit of the video. It is so easy. Then you hit export, you download it, then you upload to YouTube. You don't have to overthink it. And I think I'm just trying to encourage, because I've already encouraged you and you did it. But for anybody else that is also thinking, wow, it's like pretty overwhelming to think now I got to edit a 45-minute video podcast. It's like you can over edit it for sure. I don't know how much time people spend editing their audio podcast, but you can export the video and then you can export the audio separately for your audio podcast. And you can do it all within this app here, which is pretty magical.
Yeah. Yeah, it's for sure. And not to sound like an advertisement for Riverside by any means, but there are a lot of features that they've added that were very attractive and easy for me to say, okay, it is an investment for sure, but it's a well worth investment that's going to give me, like you said, assets, and it's a tool that I can leverage for more content and to reach more people and to talk about what I do and to have the guests talk about what they do and have it be in a forum that is different than just what I've been doing in the past of audio. And so, I know we kind of dove into the practical,
real tactical,
which is fine. But I do want to pause and just say, you are a guy who helps people tell their stories on video, helps businesses tell their stories. You're coaching them in this process, drawing things out of them. I know you relayed a little bit of that. Like I said, when we were in Orlando, you were speaking and you were telling about your process and that. I want to know, let's back this thing up a little bit. And I want to know, how did this actually come to be? Was video a thing that you were interested in even as a kid, where you're making home movies and things or whatever? Or was this something that you kind of stumbled into because of something else?
It's always been a part of me. I think about, I grew up, I was born in the very late 70s. So I grew up in the 80s and the 90s ish. Yeah, I'm still growing up. Who am I trying to kid here? But I remember Fisher Price had a video camera that it took digital, analog tapes. Like cassette tapes. You could put a tape in there. I don't know how the technology even worked, but I remember seeing that. And I think I was in third grade. I wanted that thing so bad for Christmas. Victor Stockton got one, but I did not get one. So annoying. But I dreamed of making movies. In fourth or fifth grade, I got this thing called I think it was called the Animator. And you could, make cartoons kind of with this bulky thing. It was really hard, but it was very fun to play with. And then when I was in middle school, my best friend, his dad bought a video camera, and we got to start really playing. We made zombie movies and killer
Yeah.
clowns from outer space,
Oh, yeah.
and just all sorts of ridiculous, so dumb. But we had so much fun. We lived, out in the woods on dirt roads. We had like hardly anything to do except for use our imaginations. And so we just played a lot. And as I got older, I never ever thought about, like, I never had a dream to like go to Hollywood and do stuff, but to make fun videos with my friends was always something that we were just kind of messing around with. And then I went to this small Christian college in Metro Detroit. And while I was there, I was working in the enrollment department. I graduated and took a job there full time. And somehow I had convinced my boss to buy me a video camera and a laptop. And this is right when Apple came out with this thing called a Firewire. Well, I don't know if they came out with Firewire cable, but Firewire cable came out. You could plug in your camera to your computer and edit like right there. So if you're a lot younger than us, then you don't know what this is like, because right now you just grab your phone, you shoot, you edit. That's the thing. But back in the day, you would shoot on a tape, then you'd have to rewind the tape, which that took a year to do, and then you would have to plug in like 8,000 cables to all of this different hardware, and then you hit play on the camera, and then you hit record on the computer, and it's just this tedious process. So to do any editing that was worth anything, at least with the kind of equipment that I could afford, just couldn't make anything. That's why it was never really a dream. It was like, this is, how in the world would I ever be able to do this? But then in the early 2000s, this technology comes out, and you if you had a $2,000 or $3,000 camera and a $2,000 laptop, you could do this with the software that was included with an Apple. And so started making promotional videos for the school. And then I was just seeing different videos that some different people I followed were making. We went to this church that had a really high video production. They just valued video. And I mean, I was watching these powerful 8-minute stories pretty much every Sunday, and just being moved to tears to see these stories of transformation of just like regular people who maybe made some poor decisions in their life, or didn't, but had this like life altering event, and now they're trying to bring value to the world. And I was seeing these stories and just like bawling like every single Sunday. And I'm like, that's what I want. I want to make something that moves people. And so eventually I left the college and pursued video full time. My wife and I were newly married, and I just said, what if I left the school and just did video? And she's like, let's do it. We were young, and we didn't really have much debt, and we didn't need much money. And so I was able to leave the school, and slowly but surely, I was getting random clients, doing a little bit of everything. And then finally found a niche and started making money, and then making more money than I did at the school. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. So I found myself kind of living this dream that I didn't really, it was, I think, deep inside of me, but to actually be doing it and getting paid for it, I felt like I was cheating the system. I didn't want anybody really to find out, because I'm like, this seems way too good to be true. And 20 plus years later, here I am, still doing some of that. It's pretty fun.
Love that. So it's very organic sounding, in the way that next steps appeared and opportunities appeared, and you just kind of said, all right, we're going to figure this out. And it's interesting because you in a sense probably had to learn a lot about starting your own thing, right? Being an entrepreneur, being a small business owner. Was there a training ground that you had for that, or was that pretty much like, okay, we're doing this and we're going to figure it as we go? Or like, what did that look like?
Well, another thing I didn't realize until I was, and this sounds so dumb, people are going to be like, "What, Mike, why'd you have this guy on the show? He's not very sharp." It took me, I think, about 12 years of running a business, where I had employees and whatever, we're just doing the thing, that I finally realized, like, I'm like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. And I've always been an entrepreneur. I started remembering just being a kid, and I would get Boys Life magazine, and the most exciting part about this magazine was going to the end of the magazine and looking at all of the ads and the things that they had in there. And I really liked magic tricks. And so I had, they were always pitching these different magic trick bundles and things. And so I would save my money and buy things. And I had this dream of doing a magic show. We lived in the middle of nowhere. My best friend was the closest neighbor I had, and it was like a 10-minute bike ride to his house. So there's like nobody lived on our dirt road, but I had this dream of hosting a magic show that I was going to, entertain people. And, I thought through, man, if I had this many people show up and I charged them this much, the next show I could buy the ultimate magic package that this Boys Life magazine, has in the, so. And then I'm just thinking through, the lemonade stands, and my friend launched a t-shirt printing business when I was in high school, and I helped him out. And I was always just dreaming about starting something and trying to figure out ways to monetize the things that I found I would get so passionate and excited about. But most of the ideas I never pursued. I'm a great starter. That's like one of my strengths, but also it's like one of my greatest weaknesses, because that just means like, how many of the things have I wanted to start? Have I, or have I finished? And it's an interesting look. It's an interesting list, because I probably have, 8 bazillion ideas, and I've, completed 7 of them. So yeah, I've failed forward. I've fumbled a lot. I didn't go to school for business. I got a degree in speech communication. So I think that means I sort of know how to talk, kind of ish. And it's really been about, for me, I've loved reading books, business books. I've loved surrounding myself with people, who are in business, and asking questions and listening. So I feel like I've become a lifelong learner in business. And I love learning about sales, marketing, and process and mindset, and, just all of the things. And I feel like I've been able to experiment for the last bunch of years and see a lot of things that haven't worked, and see some things that have. And, I've got plenty more mistakes to make, but yeah, it's a process.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's the common thing, right? Is people going, from the outside, it looks one way, but when you're in the midst of it, you're like, oh, okay, this is a different story. Now there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that I need to figure out, ask a lot of questions, fail, like you said, fail a lot. And I think that's all part of it, because that's how
Yeah.
you're growing. That's how you're owning things, understanding things. And I love that you even use the word experiment, because, so much of what we do, there's a sense of, okay, I may see somebody who's doing something similar, but they're not me,
Right.
and they don't have the same life that I have. And so
Yeah.
while I may be able to take certain things from them and apply it, I can't simply just copy what somebody else is doing and expect it to work the same way in my life that it does for them or in my business. And so this sense of experimenting and going, okay, we're going to try some stuff, and we're probably going to break some things. Maybe some things are going to go on fire, and that's okay. Like, that's part of it. And at least I'm going to understand. At least I'm going to learn and grow. In the midst of all this, as you're building this business, as you're pursuing your passion to tell stories via video, is there a point ever where you felt like, I've taken this thing that I love and that I'm passionate about, and now I've tied it to my livelihood, and it introduced a pressure and a financial responsibility to it that is kind of making it not so fun anymore? Like, have you ever been in that spot?
Yes.
Okay. I think that is a common thing too. That's why I ask this question, is because it's hard, right? Like, when you go into it thinking one thing of like, I love this.
Yeah.
And the best scenario is if I can do more of this, but that's not necessarily always the case. What, if you're willing to, how do you navigate that? Like, what's the conversation look like with
Yeah.
yourself?
I would say the first time I started experiencing that was when cell phones started having video capability and people were creating content. So it wasn't there was this, like, before that, only certain people would buy video cameras, and then only certain people would actually edit the videos that they're creating. But now, early or like late 2000s, maybe 2010 and beyond, people, social media and so for me, it just became like, wow, this isn't as special and unique. Everybody's creating stuff, so my stuff does not stand out like it used to. So that kind of was the first feeling of that. But then as I started in hiring employees and delegating some of the creative work, first thing I delegated was editing, because that was just like, that takes so much time. And then, we started having babies, and our dreams kind of changed from like, hey, we don't need to make any money, to like, hey, we actually need to make some money. And
Right.
so how do we become more profitable? And for me, I'm like, well, I've got to hire employees, and I've got to hand off some of this work that is taking a long time to create and to deliver. And how do we become more profitable and efficient? And it's like, well, that means I just need to be doing less of the day to day and more of the big picture. And so for years, I was focused on, I made it, I had to make a decision. Do I want to continue improving as a filmmaker, or do I want to improve as a business owner? Because I felt like one was only going to lead to barely incremental steps in more revenue and more salary for me, more take home salary for us. And then the other one would actually scale the business. And I decided, I was like, I want to scale the business because I want more freedoms in my life. I want the freedom to create when I want to and how I want to, but maybe that's different than what we're doing inside of the business.
Mm-hmm.
The only way for me to find some of that freedom, that time freedom and that financial freedom, is I've got to figure out how to replicate myself, or come up with a new process or new kinds of videos that don't require me to shoot or edit, and maybe even to plan and to do all of that stuff. And that was a great decision for us to grow the business. But in the meantime, I'm like, man, I don't remember the last time I was on a shoot, or I don't remember the last video I edited. Then fast forward a bunch more years after that, I remember I bought a still camera, and bought a couple of really nice lenses, and started taking pictures. And I'm like, oh man, this is so fun. I've got instant gratification. I'm creating again, not using my cell phone. I'm not using a video camera. So there's no editing. It's just like, I'm capturing beautiful stuff again. This is really fun. And then fast forward a little bit more to today, where, I've got an iPhone 16 that takes amazing video. I've got this fun little pocket Osmo that's really fun. That's not my phone. And I'm actually creating more stuff like for me that isn't necessarily for business, but it could be. And, I finally have a little bit of margin in my life, and not this feeling of like, okay, if I'm going to shoot this, now I'm hooked to the, to the editing and everything that's involved. But how can I make this simple so that it's enjoyable and doesn't require, so much time for me? So I haven't figured it out, but I've definitely experienced that. Like, wow, I got into this because I really love doing video shooting and editing. And then at some point I was like, I'm not doing any shooting or editing. And I was like, oh, this is cool, because my desires and my goals have changed. And then I got to a place where I'm like, man, I really want to get back to a place where I can make the choice to jump back in and create when I want to, not because I have to, but because I get to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I think, especially if anyone's in school and they're thinking, I want to leverage my creativity for my livelihood. This is what I want to do
Mm,
with my life, right? I
yeah.
want to use my creativity. And I know I fell into this category where I didn't really define what that really meant
Mm-hmm.
past, well, me having a job and actually making money and me doing something creative. Like, that was it.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that there are different types of ways that you use your creativity in that way, and how you very beautifully described of going, like, there's the business side, maybe the client stuff, and then there's the stuff that maybe you're more interested in, that I call passion projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not an either or, it's an
Yeah.
and both. Because I think the temptation is, when you don't have an outlet for your passion projects, you get so bogged down by the client work, and it starts to feel heavy. And then you start to
Mm-hmm.
go, I don't have space or room, or it's not appropriate for me to follow some curiosity in a project that I want to do. So I don't have a place for that to go. So then I
Yeah.
start feeling frustrated, and I'm on this hamster wheel of frustration. And then what I want to do is just leave. I want to get out.
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't
Yeah.
fun, right? This isn't
You're
what I
right.
signed up for. And then you can't go the other way either, where you're only doing passion projects and things
Mm-hmm.
that, following the muse, and then there's no money involved. And then, you don't have a livelihood. You have a hobby and you have
Right.
interests and passions, but it's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard, but I think it's necessary to define what that looks like for each person, and to have those elements to go, yes, I have a place where I can play, where I can follow my curiosity, where I can do some things that I'm passionate about that could actually come around and influence the work that you do for
Mm.
client work, right? I think you even said that. Are there any other like creative practices that you do that are helpful, and maybe maybe that sounds a little too formal when I say like creative practices, right? That could even mean you making sure that you have intake creatively, right?
Mm.
Inspiration, that you're somehow capturing those things so that you can go to that when you feel like you need, the swipe file, so to speak, right? Where you can have that reference,
Yeah.
or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think one thing I want to say is I started redefining what creativity really means. And I think a lot of us think, oh, it's, you're a great filmmaker or a great storyteller, or you're a great artist or illustrator, a great designer, musician, whatever. But, when I look at some of the things that I've been able to do in my business, me hitting pause, ooh, that's a good word. But me hitting pause on actually making videos and looking at what can I do creatively in my business to help us be more efficient and to take home more money. These processes and procedures, which just sound, to the, quintessential creative, like, oh, that sounds terrible and don't put me in a box. But me trying to be creative in making some boundaries for our team and for me to say, hey, when we get a brand video, this is the time frame that we want to create this in. These are the kinds of questions that we have to get answered, because that's what's going to help inform this piece to be able to do this thing that it needs to do. So I would just give that permission for people to think outside of that box. Like, your creativity isn't just in, the things that you're drawing or, producing with your voice or whatever. There's so much more to it. And parts of your business, if you have a business, those need some creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And when that flip switched, that was very, very helpful for me, because I didn't feel like, I was like, okay, I'm still being creative, just very, very differently than than I was before.
Yeah,
So I didn't really answer the question, and I forgot what the actual question was.
just
So
creative
help me.
practices. Yeah.
Oh yeah, something I learned recently is that for me, I love Audible. Now, I didn't realize until just recently that Spotify has
Yeah.
audiobooks, and I get, I think, 15 hours of a month of audiobook stuff. I really enjoy some podcasts, and I really enjoy business books. I love books on, finding more time, how to find more freedom, how to be better at sales and marketing and branding. And so I love listening to these books. I love reading books, and hearing people talk about, how they're doing business. Those conversations really, really inspire me. And I've found that when I go, sometimes instead of listening to a book on business, I'll listen to one of my favorite audiobooks ever is the Harry Potter series. This guy named Jack Vale, I think it
Oh
is.
yeah, I've heard of this. Yeah.
um, the most amazing voiceover guy in the world. I'm sorry if I messed that name up. There's also, I feel like Jack Vale is the guy on Instagram that has the fart noisemaker and goes in the aisles at the store. I think that's Jack Vale. Shoot, I'm gonna have to find out what his name is. He's since passed, but he voiced all of this 7 books, I think it is, and has a different voice for every single character. I don't know how many characters there are in that series, but it's one of the most engaging amazing stories. Anyway, I can listen to that and just love it, love it, love it. And I feel like I'm consuming content. And this is really, really good. But when I listen to something that's about business, I'm inspired. It makes me think about my business. And when I go through those times where I'm not listening to something that's business related, there is a part of me that just feels a little bit flat, and I forget, because it might take weeks to listen to an entire Harry Potter book. And during that time, I'm not consuming other content. Like that's the content that I'm spending my time consuming. And then I realize like, oh, I'm not like super excited about a new idea because I haven't been hearing any new ideas. I haven't been consuming those. So I think that, and that might seem like a little bit weird, but I journal almost every day in the morning. I like to have quiet time and reflect. I think those things really help me. But it's interesting because somebody a few months ago, a business consultant, she was sharing with me, and she's like, yeah, the way that you're wired, she's like, you need that kind of outside stimulation in order to stay stimulated creatively. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you're right. And she said like books and podcasts, and I'm like, that's why I think I've been addicted to Audible for so long, is because, and I don't even necessarily do, 99% of the things that people are laying out in those books, but it just sparks something in my brain, and I might take one thing away, or I may not, but it's still, it just energizes me in a way that, a lot of stuff just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an engagement with your brain that causes you
Mm-hmm.
to kind of examine, look at it from different angles and go like, okay, what of this do I relate to?
Yeah.
What can I take away as a practical step? What's just inspiring that I don't necessarily ever want to do myself personally, but knowing somebody else is doing that, wow, okay. It opens possibilities, right? It
Yeah.
opens up some inspiration to do some things. In regards to that kind of thing, even as a creator, we're always looking at the next project that's happening, right? The okay, here's all the stuff that I've done. I've been there, done that. Now I'm building on top of that. But there's a next project. There's a next thing that I'm pursuing. Um, is there anything that you're thinking about right now where you're like, man, I would really love to do this?
Yeah. It's a long list, Mike. How much time we have? I'm really excited to write a book. I've outlined a book, and really it comes down to like the thing I'm most passionate about, the thing I get the most excited about. 21 years ago, when it hasn't been 21 years, but almost, when I started my business, it was born out of this idea that we all have stories and we all need to be telling our stories. They're valuable, they're helpful. Most of us don't believe that. And I wanted to make videos that would inspire people to do that, and to get people that aren't normally telling their stories to realize like, wow, this actually could be helpful for other people. So that hasn't changed. The kind of work that we've been doing over 20 years has changed, but my heart for that has remained the same. And if anything, it's kind of grown, especially this new season for all of us with AI and with all of this new content and way more content than we've ever seen and experienced before. When we are trying to build our own business, or we're looking at what businesses we want to work with, there's something inside of us, the way that we are designed. We crave connection. We crave like human connection, not robotic connection,
Yeah.
or like fake connection. And where so much of that comes from is our stories. And when we're open and honest and real, and we share with other people, and that's why I love this format, is because we're just sharing real stories. And for better or worse, some of these stories I've shared 100 times or 1,000 times, so they roll off my tongue like this. But sometimes I have to sit and think and like, oh, I haven't really thought about that. But for people to feel the realness and the humanity, there is so much value in that. And if we can bring that into our businesses, and if we can bring that into our sales and our marketing, then as we are competing with other brands, there's an opportunity for us to work more with our ideal clients, so long as we're showing up as our true, authentic selves. If we're showing up as our best AI version, we're going to sound like this brand over here and this business over there because we're all using the same tools and it's the same thing. But if we're using our story as kind of like, this is the core of who I am, this is the soul of my business and brand, these are the things I care about, these are the things that drive me crazy. You add all of those things together and it makes you. There are a ton of other video companies out there, and so many, probably 90% of them, go to their website, it says like, your story matters, let us tell your story, or your story, or whatever, and that all sounds the same, and it's like we're using the same branding person, and it's just going to get worse with AI if we're using the same thing. It's like it's just going to be more and more of that. But when you can differentiate with your story and why you do what you do and what you care about, that's what makes you stand apart. And those are the things that are going to resonate with other people. Those are the things that are going to turn people onto you. And those are some of the same things that are going to turn the right people off to you. The right people, as in like, you're not fit clients, not good fit clients. So I'm still passionate about this. And I want people to understand. I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't want people to really know me, because then they probably wouldn't hire me in whatever, because of whatever reason. But do you have friends? ? Okay. So if you have friends, you are likable. So that means that you can actually share your real self. And if you haven't shared your real self with your friends or your family, you're missing out. You're missing out on what is so good about this life, because there are people out there that will love you for who you are, and that might challenge you to be better and to grow, but they're there. And if you can do that with your business, I mean, I've experienced this, and I've found so much freedom in being able to be me and know that some people aren't going to like the Ryan that's a little bit irreverent, sarcastic, loves Michael Scott, The Office, and is also a person of faith. And like you smush all of those things together, and it's like, what? Like, is that it? Is that actually a thing? There's some people that love it, and there's some people that hate it. And that, I don't want to work with the people that hate it. But the sooner people can get me and understand my quirky personality, the sooner they can decide whether or not they want to have a serious conversation about maybe doing some work together, or like, I'm never going to have that conversation with Ryan because I could never stand working with a person like that. Awesome. If I can save ourselves a 30-minute discovery call conversation because you saw a video of me just showing up, being who I am, and that's not, I'm not your cup of tea, good. I just did my job. Save myself some time, save you some time. So I don't know if I gave you way too much there, but I'm just good. A little excited about power of your story.
Well, yeah, and that piece of authenticity, I think, is so important, because, again, it can be too easy to think, well, my story has to look like somebody else's story. All the ones that I've seen that have been, quote, successful or interesting, mine doesn't look like that, right. And or my story's a mess, right? Like, I've had failure, I've had, personally speaking, my story, I feel like I have risen from the ashes a few times. And
your story's a mess, man.
It is. But that honestly, I learned that my mess is my message. It's an invitation.
Beautiful.
It is an invitation for myself to understand myself better, right? To give meaning and context, but then also to offer it to other people as hope, and to say, look, you could go through all sorts of different things, but it doesn't mean that this is failure. It doesn't mean this is the end. It doesn't mean that just because it's not the way you want it to look like, or how you want things to look like, when you want them to look like, doesn't mean that you're disqualified. Creativity also means being creative with your life. Not just what you produce for other people, but how you show up in the world. And I think when we take ownership over ourselves and, like you said, be authentic, then we have opportunities that we would never have otherwise,
Yeah, I love that.
When you're dealing with people who come to you and say, I want to tell my story, but I don't think I have really anything much to say, I don't think it's that interesting. How are you getting to some places that help them see and have that moment to go, oh, okay, I do. Like, I know you coach people through, you're asking questions, like, but what does that look like?
I think it's two parts. One part, typically what I'm doing with somebody is going through our workshop. And in our workshop, I'm really just asking a lot of, why questions. I'm trying to get to the heart and soul of their brand, why they do what they do, why they care about, like who's ideal clients, what does success look like, and just trying to paint a picture and get a better understanding. And we'll produce a blueprint that's like, hey, here's your content blueprint. This is if your video was on paper, this is what it would kind of look like and feel like. And people are a lot of times like, wow, this actually sounds pretty good, when you put it together like that. Well, then the next phase in that typically involves, if they move forward with doing video and not just, using the blueprint to use for themselves or whatever, but if they hire us to do video of them with them, when they see the cut of them, and we're going to take the best sound bites, the most meaningful sound bites, the pieces that just showcase them what we think is the best way. When they see that, and maybe there's some music underneath and some beautiful B-roll, some other footage that kind of helps tell the story, but when they see them on screen shot by a professional, not just selfie style or whatever, that can look good too, whatever. But when they're hiring us to do it, they're like, wow, I actually look pretty good and sound way better than I thought. I don't know what you guys did. We're like, it's just like, we're so hard on ourselves and we're so hard on our own story. We undervalue so much of what we have to offer. But I would say that those two spaces, when you're guided, with somebody that you trust, those people can bring the best out in you. And I remember the very first time I went through a branding process, and the branding guy, DJ Harula, a great friend and mentor of mine, he shared this document that had all of this stuff. And I'm like, did I say that? Because man, that sounds like really good. And he's an artist and was able to put it in a way that made sense and that flowed. And that's what we do with video and the content that we're creating. So for those that don't think they look good or sound good, it's amazing what happens when you work with somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes. And I think also encouraging people to know, when you're creating something or when you're offering a service, you need multiple ways of being able to talk about that with people. And so, yes, you need strong copywriting or the ability to have written word about what it is that you do, why you do it. And yes, you need video to be able to show to people so that they can understand, so they can see you and feel you. It's not the either or things again. I think it's there are tools in the toolbox, and to be able to show up and talk about what you do in a variety of different forums that may not be your primary place of creativity, right? Someone who's maybe is a painter and they're like, I'm very introverted and I'm just doing my thing. I'm in my cave, right? And then I come out and here it is. They don't really interact with people much, whatever. They don't feel very confident. For them to understand the benefit of showing up and telling their story on video, so that it's accessible for other people. That is something that is so huge, and that could be a game changer for that person, because then it makes introductions and hopefully sales too, right?
One of my favorite stories, we partnered with this course creator, Susan McCleary. She does amazing floral wearables, and she is not a person that wants to promote. Like, she just loves the craft so much, wants to help people. And I've had to work with her over the years to like, Susan, like, you gotta try to pitch this a little bit harder. She's like, I don't want to turn people off. And I'm like, I get it. She just has so much to offer. We filmed her story right around when we first started working with her, I think in 2018. And during this interview with her, she's, very articulate, just has beautiful use of the English language. And, during, I forget what question she was answering, or maybe we were in between questions, she got a notification on her phone that Prince had just died. She just is like, oh my gosh. And she freaks out. And so we just pressed into that, once she, had a moment to calm down or whatever. we pressed into that, and we used that in the final piece, which was so, I mean, the timing couldn't have been better, but it just showed how much she cared, because this person was so influential in her life and had inspired her work so much. And for people to see that, I mean, it's so real, it's so raw, it's just Susan, and you just got this beautiful picture. So the timing of that was amazing. If something like that doesn't happen, you know, our job is really just to keep pressing in and find those things that mean the most, so that when people can hear that, like, for that, the right person is just going to resonate in the right way. So kind of fun.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Unbelievably, we're at the top of our time already. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this stuff for days, especially hanging out. But I so appreciate you being here and sharing your story, sharing a bit of your process. But where can people find you if they want to work with you? Like, lay some links and some information on this.
Yeah, I mean, two of the easiest places, LinkedIn is probably where I post the most, and most of that content is a little bit more I don't want to say it's more corporate, but probably a little bit more corporate. If you want my, you know, stories and my, you know, I'm hanging out with my family or my friends or whatever, then I'm over on Instagram. But both places I'm at Ryan Koral, and it's Koral. So like under the sea, but spelled totally different, Koral. And then, you know, I've got a weekly podcast for filmmakers. And I'd say it's really for creatives as well. We talk mostly for two people that are building a video production business. So we talk sales, marketing, and all of the things that most creatives kind of run into. So that can be very helpful. It's called Grow Your Video Business. And Tell Studios is the name of our studio. And we've got a bunch of work on there and our process. And the website is tellstudios.com, is TELL Studios. And then I do have, if anybody is interested in telling better stories, telling their story better, or just showing up online with more confidence, whether it's social media or creating videos for your own website, I have it's like an 18-minute workshop, and I go through our 4-part framework. It's called the Tell framework. People can watch this for totally free. It's at Tell Studios, TELL studios.com/easy. We just call it our Video Marketing Made Easy workshop. So that could be a helpful resource for your peeps as well.
Awesome. Love that. Love that. And I highly recommend that, you know, you're listening to this podcast right now. One more.
Some of you are watching it.
Yeah, some of you are watching it. That's true. I have to get in the habit of saying that now. But one more podcast, you know, that is amazing. Obviously, Ryan, you know what you're talking about. You're authentic. You're personable, and just appreciate how you show up in the world, how you serve with creativity, and then create some resources for folks to be able to engage their story and get it out into the world as well. So thanks so much for this time today, dude.
Yeah, Mike, thank you. And I love what you're doing. I love your heart behind this. You've got a gift, and I'm grateful. And I know a lot of people are thankful for the work that you're doing. So thanks for showing up. Hi, Yar.
Thanks, man. A little bro hug. Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.